So I'm kind of disappointed that I don't have rose petals to walk on. Especially because I thought it would be a nice stage for a story that I want to tell you. So my family and I were vacationing in the very southern tip of India. And we came across, in the middle of nowhere, a banana plantation. And so we decided we were going to explore. And we walked into this banana plantation probably 30 minutes or so into this place, and we came across this tiny village, right? It was like literally walking into the pages of a National Geographic magazine. It was beautiful, right? It had water wells and little tiny grass huts, and it just felt completely untouched by anything in the modern world. And this young man named Suri, who you see on the slides here, he approached us and he said, "Hey, would you like to have some coconut water?" We said, "Sure." And quickly, he literally scampers up a coconut tree, and he hangs out up there and takes an axe that I swear was given to him by his great-great-great-grandfather, and he starts hacking away at these coconuts. And we feel like we have been transported back in time at least 100 plus years. And all of a sudden, we hear ring, ring, ring. And here's Suri hanging on this coconut tree with one arm, the other arm reaching back to his back pocket, and he pulls out a cell phone. And he answers it as he's hanging off of this tree. And we are immediately brought back to the present. And what we thought was fascinating is that here's a village with no running water, with no electricity, yet every single young person has a cell phone. Okay? And what's even more interesting, as we started to talk to these guys a little more, translated by our driver, was that the banana plantation's harvest schedule is completely now managed through the phone. Because now they can actually talk to the local markets and they can find out how much product they need to harvest and which market is going to give them the best price. It's unbelievable, this little village that was isolated from the rest of the world with one piece of technology is now connected to the rest of the world. Right? And this absolutely fascinated me. The power of technology to connect people really has the ability to change the world. And I started thinking broad. Think about the millions of people like Suri who are wanting to have a better quality of life. He's wanting to have better education. He wants to have better health care. He wants to be able to have job opportunities, right? And he's connecting with other people just like him. It's people like this, when you take it into the millions, that are going to make big changes to countries like India. Even as big as, let's say, removing hunger from India, right? Think about this country. It has the second largest farm crop output of any nation in the world, yet 30% of its people are hungry. Right? What happens when all of the people who are actually working in this system can start getting beyond the corruption, start getting beyond the antiquated distribution system, and talk to one another and figure out solutions that are actually going to change the world? The other thing about Suri that we found out is he is highly ambitious. And after we left, he continued to call us every week for months. Right? And we don't even speak his language, but nonetheless, he called us. And he was basically wanting to be able to move into a big city, right? He was wanting those opportunities. And what we found is that there are millions of people, in fact, 500 to 700 million people in the world who are going to be urbanizing in the next 5 years. Just think about that. 100 new cities are being created with over 1 million citizens in each one of those cities by the year 2025. 180,000 people move into cities every single day. Right? How are we going to keep up with that? Right? And there are other mega trends that are completely changing the world. For example, the aging population. So in the year 2000 versus the year 2050, the number of people over the age of 65 almost triples. Right? What are you going to do with healthcare? How are we going to support all of these individuals? Right? And there are some countries in Europe that are actually declining significantly. Some countries in that same 50-year period are going to be reduced by almost 1/3 of their country. How are they going to be able to maintain the level of productivity needed with the remaining individuals to maintain their standard of living? Right? And then you've got the opposite, with some countries that are just booming, hyper-growth situation, massive population increase, and governments are struggling. How are we going to deal with infrastructure? How are we going to deal with providing the basic services of education and healthcare, right? And the economic shifts are completely changing the business models. With the developing countries now rising, they're thinking about things differently than the way that we've done in the West. And technology plays a key role in all of this and making this better, making it sustainable. Let me give you a real-life example. This picture is of Korea. And it's a new town, brand new, actually built from reclaimed land off of the ocean. It's called Songdo. And I spent a lot of time in this city. And the vision of the Korean government in dealing with this mass urbanization has been so strong. They want to be able to take all of the individual components of a city. It's transportation systems, it's fire and water, safety, security activities, the education systems, even their Jack Nicholson golf course, and connect them all together, right? And we're helping them do this in a smart way, to where the connectivity between the people and the data and the devices is all real time. And it's providing solutions that change the way that they look at their economics, their productivity factors, it improves their social services, and it gives a tremendous amount of improvement to CO2 emissions and other types of environmental considerations. It's fascinating. And what's amazing about Korea and Songdo is that it's happening right now. You can go there and you can see it. And you can see how all of these people are thinking differently, thinking outside the box and figuring out how to be able to make things more positive for their citizens. Let's look at some of these industries maybe in a little bit more detail. Right? Education. Education is traditionally done with brick and mortar buildings and textbooks, right? This is how most, I would say probably everybody in this room was educated in this fashion, right? But now we've got companies like Khan Academy and Open University and Duke University who are really looking at the essence of what makes good education, high quality education. And really it's that interaction, right? The interaction between the teachers and the students with one another. That connection amongst the people, that's the magic of learning. And what they've been doing is figuring out a way to leverage technology to still have that personal connection, but basically make distance completely irrelevant, right? And it's fascinating. My son uses Khan Academy, as do, by the way, 41 million visits in Khan Academy in just an 18-month period. I know many of you have heard of him. And he uses this all the time to augment his educational process, right? He's taking a molecular biology class, and when he was struggling, I was trying to help him. And I soon realized that, as he gets older, my IQ continues to go down. And he's like, thanks very much, Mom, but I'm just going to go listen to Sal Khan's video, right? And he gets so much more out of that. And he's probably smarter. I know nothing about molecular biology. Now take the same type of technology and spread it beyond just what we see here with our kids and students that we deal with. How is technology going to reach the rural communities of Africa and India and Malaysia? And how is it going to actually transform their lives by giving them opportunities that they normally would never have? I've seen these places. I've gone to these schools. The ability for them to connect via a screen to somebody who understands what they're talking about is so fascinating for them, and they're excited about it, and they're excited about learning, and it will change the world. Let's look at healthcare. Here's another great example of an industry that one would think initially, you got to have physical contact with your doctor, right? How is that going to be virtual, right? But in reality, there's a majority of the initial doctor visits that don't truly require physical touch, right? Think about it. Think about how many times you actually see your doctor. You're having a conversation, right? He's got your vital sign information. He's got maybe some test results, some diagnostic imaging results, right? That physical contact doesn't always need to be there. And if you have powerful technology with video where you can actually talk to them in a real-life fashion as though you're in the same room. And you've got specialized equipment, and maybe a nurse practitioner that's sitting in a community center in the middle of a rural area in China or Africa, where people normally do not have access to any sort of medical assistance. And you can start filtering these people in and having them talk to a doctor. And if somebody seems like, you know what, you've got an issue that we really need to take a look at you physically, then fine. Those individuals can make that expensive and often long journey into the cities. Right? Again, technology and the power of connecting people together in new and exciting ways really has the ability to transform the world. And there are so many examples, right? I can talk about safety and security. I could talk about stadiums and how we can actually connect with one another, with the fans, with the players, with data and information while you're sitting in the stadium. It's so much fun. The telepresence capabilities, where we work. Instead of having to fly halfway around the world for a 2-hour meeting, you can have that same interaction while being in a telepresence call. And there's so many solutions, but unfortunately, they've only given me 15 minutes to talk to you. But I'm fascinated by this. It's exciting. It is energizing when you think about how positive impacts can really happen when people can connect together, irregardless of that physical location. And we've talked about agriculture now, right? We've talked about education and healthcare and some of the fun things with stadiums and security. But we have, I'm telling you, we have barely scratched the surface on what is possible. We have no idea what the world is going to look like in 2025 or in 2050. It's going to be brilliant, right? And what I love about this is that the world is going to be so much more inclusive, and that just warms my heart, right? It's going to pull in people that have been neglected in our society for so many years, and I think it's fabulous, right? It's like a revolution. Right? And who's leading this revolution, right? I mean, there are definitely heads of states, and there are business leaders, and they're doing wonderful things, and they're absorbing this technology. They're trying to make it work. They're trying to develop it. But the real leaders of this are people just like us, sitting in the room. The old adage, need is the mother of invention, that so holds true. And it's the everyday people. It's people like Saul Khan with Khan Academy, or people like Suri with his little mobile phone in that banana village. And they're creating ad hoc solutions that are game-changing. Right? The power of technology to connect people flattens the world, right? Even more so. We've always heard about the world being flat. But you think about the way that the world has now become an even playing field for anybody to participate. These solutions just enhance that more and more. And I want to leave you guys with the thought of what we can do to be able to make this successful. And really, it's all about imagination. It's about honing in and taking on this opportunity to be as creative as we possibly can, to think outside the box, draw outside the lines, and really figure out how we can take technology and how we can focus in on connecting people to truly change what the world will look like. Thank you.